Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. Penn State gets their first ever playoff victory over the SMU Ponies, 38-10. We are going to be talking a lot about the football game, how Penn State was able to thrive in a 106,000 capacity crowd, how they were able to dominate on defense, and what is next for the Nittany Lions. Also, some updates in the transfer portal. Penn State earns another commit, and we find out where two departures are actually heading. Penn State will face Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. A lot to get to on today's show. Let's get right into it. If you haven't already, please make sure to like the video and subscribe wherever you're listening. Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Not too bad, Cory. That was more of an abbreviated Shawn Kane, but still a lot of energy.
I'm trying to bring the energy, but I did lose the voice.
Yeah, I could relate. Feeling pretty good. You know, I'll say this about James Franklin.
Should I start recording already? Are you about to drop a nice take?
Well, he has the best winning percentage ever in the college football playoff.
It's true. And while we're at it, James Franklin 1-0 in playoff games. Joe Paterno's 0-0. Just saying.
Yep. Never got a win. Joe Paterno has as many playoff wins as you and I, Cory.
It's going to piss people off. Shawn, my voice actually wasn't that bad after the game. I had to do a little bit of yelling at the dogs this morning, and it just took the last little bit of it out of me. But I think I want to start there. Well, Penn State wins the game 38-10. But I want to start with the atmosphere first. There was a lot of talk about, tickets are cheap. It's not going to be full. Some jabroni in Pittsburgh said it's going to be 70,000 people there. No. 106,000 people bundled up in wind chill of 10 degrees to watch the Nittany Lions at noon in a whiteout environment. And I will just go on record and say, Shawn, that was the loudest noon game I've ever been to, and it rivals one of the loudest and most sustained atmospheres I have ever been to. They were loud from the beginning, and they were loud all the way into the end of the game. I also, in my section, stood the entire game. Typically, even in the whiteouts, I have opportunities to sit down when our team's on offense. Stood the entire game. There was more high-fiving. There was more camaraderie. It really did feel different than other football games. It really did. And I think part of it, Shawn, is there was this culmination, this fulfillment that Penn State finally was in the playoff. People weren't going to miss it, and they were just over-fulfilled once Penn State got a massive lead. I mean, that second interception by Tony Rojas, and you can still go watch it on the TV broadcast and hear it. The pop of the crowd when he picks that off, and then the sustained pick after every broken tackle, that is going to go down in the history of Penn State football as one of those plays that you'll never forget. I'll never forget where I was when it happened. I'm sure you'll never forget where you were when it happened. But just in general, Shawn, the atmosphere was incredible. It was exactly what you would want to see if you are a TV production person and are we going to continue to have home games in the future of the playoffs in the first round? That's the kind of vibe you wanted. And it was very, very special to be a part of that. That was 100% worth it. It was 100% going out and freezing. It was 100% worth traveling if you had to travel into town. It was a fantastic and unique environment. What did we say before on the preview podcast? You were going to be a part of history. And everyone who was there not only got to see Penn State's first win in a playoff, they got to be a part of the largest crowd in college football playoff history. and they were there for James Franklin's 100th win as a Penn State football coach. So lots of history, Sean, went down on Saturday, and it was fantastic to be a part of it.
Yeah. Franklin's 100th win. He's 4 away from Rip Engel for second most all time at Penn State. I don't think he won't be able to get it this year, but next year, barring a Florida State style catastrophe, he's going to get it, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to think about. And yeah, I didn't know I'd be going to the game until the day before. Some unforeseen things happened, and I ended up going with my dad, and it was really, really cool. My brother was able to go too. He ended up snagging a ticket late. So it was just an awesome thing to be a part of. I also wanted to mention too, the scoreboard and the ribbon were way better to look at because it pretty much just said college football playoff the whole time.
Yes.
And you didn't have, I don't want to insult any of our sponsors here, but because I think there may be some crossover. But you didn't have sponsorships just rolling the whole time. We didn't need the Del Grosso red zone with the sauce pouring in every time we went to the red zone. It was just a lot better to look at, which was cool. A lot less commercialized in a world where everything is commercialized.
Sean, I'm so glad you brought this up because I probably would have forgot about this. I am so glad you brought this up. It was really cool to not be sold to every 5 seconds of a football game. On top of that, 250 commercial breaks every time. No more Fox Big Noon Kick 5-minute commercial breaks. They were 250 every time, and they weren't after every possession. It was reasonable. It was a very fun game to be in attendance for, especially since it was so cold. If I had to sit there for 5-minute commercial breaks, it would have been brutal. So I commend the playoff for the 250 commercial breaks. I really enjoyed not having all of the advertisements. It was a really cool atmosphere to be a part of. I'm glad you brought that part up too, Sean.
Yeah, the game flow I felt went pretty good because there's nothing worse than the commercial after a touchdown and then the commercial after the kickoff. It just sucks the life out of you, especially if you're standing there and weather that feels like what was it, 11 degrees. I think my dad and I checked our phones during the game for the little bit of reception we were able to get, and it said the real feel is 11, and it could feel like 11. I mean, I thought it was important to dress warm. I was in 4 layers, I think. I also wore pajama pants underneath my sweatpants.
Are you trying to turn me on?
And wore my winter hat and everything. So, and my brother actually brought hand warmers, which really worked for my gloves, which kept my hands nice and toasty. So, and yeah, the overall crowd that I'm just getting to now, like you said, my section, same thing. Everybody was just standing the entire game. Everybody was really into it, which was awesome. There's a lot of whiskey being passed around.
Ooh.
Yes, I didn't partake because I'm not much of a whiskey guy. I know Cory is. And
drinking leftover white wine tonight.
There you go. Yeah, white wine. So yeah, there's a lot of fireball shooters being passed around. I think it was very easy to sneak stuff in because everybody was so layered up. And it was another way that people could keep warm. So, but yeah, it was just really, really fun. You mentioned Rojas's interception. It felt like the crowd willed him in to the end zone. Like it was almost like he got stronger and faster as the crowd got louder and louder. And yeah, it was just an awesome, awesome experience to be a part of. I, like you, didn't know what the crowd was going to be like. I thought it would probably be about 102,000. I know the announced attendance was 106. I think it was probably a shade under that. And if you had to count every person, it was probably about 104. But there weren't a lot of empty seats, man. There really weren't. And that really surprised me. And shout out to SMU, too. They showed up more than I thought they would.
They did. How about the SMU band being stuck up in the north deck end zone? The very tippity top.
I can't believe they did that. I didn't understand why they did that. But sucks to suck, I guess. It's home field advantage for you.
Yeah. I mean, you saw how they put the Tennessee band in a pretty favorable spot. I don't exactly know how that all goes down, but Penn State was not
Yeah,
giving
'cause
SMU
nobody.
any sort of advantage.
Yeah, that band is never up there. We've been going to games for 25 years now. I've never seen the band up.
Not a very
far.
big band. Not a very big band.
No, and the blue band was far superior too.
Yes, I mean, well, yeah, that band was. I couldn't hear him at all with the wind blowing.
Yeah,
couldn't hear him. We're gonna get into the whole game recap in a second. Before we do, I just want to go through some transfer portal housekeeping. Former quarterback Bo Prabila has officially transferred to Missouri, which is kind of interesting in the sense that a Penn State recruit or prospect that they were going after, Matt Zollers, committed to Missouri. So a couple of almost Penn Staters or former Penn Staters now on the Missouri roster. So Bo goes there, and also former Penn State tight end Jerry Cross, who actually worked with us here at State Media for a little bit, is now at Memphis. So wasn't exactly sure where Jerry Cross was going to land because a 3 or 4 star guy coming out, good size, good speed, just not. Well, he's just not as good as, say, Khalil Dinkins even. And so was curious where he was going to find a home, and glad he found a home at a pretty good school and a pretty good football team in Memphis. So didn't have to drop down to play, at a lower, smaller school. Memphis, pretty solid school. So there's that. And then, Sean, we got to talk about, at least for a second, Penn State earns a commitment out of the transfer portal in defensive end Enai White. You kind of hinted at that possibility. Former Emotep out of high school, went to A&M, now coming back. High prospect coming out of high school. Just haven't been able to put it all together yet. What are your thoughts on all of the transfer portal stuff?
Yeah, I mean, good for Bo. Landing with an SEC school. We were talking about how I thought he would start at half the Big Ten, maybe even more. And yeah, lands in the SEC at a pretty good program. That's I think there's gonna be competition there. Matt Zollers is also gonna be there. I know they have another quarterback who I don't know, but I know he was a pretty highly regarded guy too. So this position's not gonna get handed to him. But Bo's a competitor, and Bo's gonna go in there and compete, and I wouldn't count against him to start. So yeah, good for him. Jerry Cross, again, nothing bad to say about Jerry Cross. Totally understand why he transferred out, and I really like Jerry Cross out of high school. Just some things happened with how loaded the room is. So there's going to be guys that leave. So, yep, no hard feelings at all there. And then Enai White, something that we expected, and highly recruited guy out of high school. Things just didn't really pan out at Texas A&M. Now, as people who follow college football know, a lot of things have happened at Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher, that whole recruiting class is out now that he brought in. They were number 1 rated in the country. He also had an injury. So a lot of different things happened with Enai White. Still has a lot of talent. And he's going to Penn State to be developed by Deion Barnes. And Deion Barnes is creating a pretty good reputation for himself, that if you want to make some money, if you want to improve as a player, Deion Barnes is going to get you there, because he helped develop Chop Robinson last season, who was a first-round pick. I fully expect Abdul Carter to be a first-round pick. I don't think Denai Dennis Sutton is right now, although he's maybe next year he will be, especially playing like he did on Saturday. So, yeah, he's going to get you in the league. And you're going to be able to win a lot of football games while you're here doing it, too.
Yeah, and the Philly connection between Deion Barnes and Enai White probably doesn't hurt either.
Not at all.
Just real quickly, Bear Alexander decides to go to Oregon. Defensive tackle David Blay decides to go to Miami. So missing out on a couple there. Keep an eye on that defensive tackle room. There's a couple other guys that they're looking at. Sounds like the Virginia receiver Fields is likely to end up at Notre Dame. So
yep, I think he committed there.
Okay, officially. Okay. So anyway, that's the latest on the transfer portal. Let's get back to the SMU game. Unless you have something else to add, Sean.
Nope, think we're good.
Okay.
Let's talk about football.
Okay. Defense. I think we got to start with the defense, right? Unless I'm on crack cocaine.
Yes.
Do we owe an apology to the linebacking core, Sean? I mean, I feel like by far this was not just the defense's best game, not just Tom Allen's best coached game, but by far the best game by the front seven and by far the best game by the linebackers. I, will have some egg on my face for saying there was a possibility this is going to be a true dogfight. Hard to have a dogfight when you throw 2 pick sixes in the first half. I mean, you take yourself out of any possibility of competing when you have 2 pick sixes. So credit Penn State for that. I thought SMU's defense did some good things to keep them in the game, but you have 2 pick sixes, most likely a hole you're never going to dig yourself out of. And a lot of people are going to look at those pick sixes and all 3 of the interceptions in the first half and say, oh, well, Jennings threw it right to him. No, those were manufactured turnovers. Well, I think I'm going to go into some film tomorrow. But Shawn, they earned those things. The front seven was tenacious on Saturday. Tom Allen went into the bag more than he had. For the blog, he has a great video on some of the stuff that he disguised as far as how he defended trips, how he decided to go cover 2 in situations where you would expect cover 2. Just a lot of different things that we hadn't seen a bunch of from Tom Allen, getting pressure with only 4 guys, but sending different guys, things that Manny Diaz did. But Shawn, at the end of the day, linebacker Dom DeLuca, by his sauce, 2 picks, one of which was a pick 6 that completely lit the whole stadium on fire. And then the other one saves James Franklin's butt on a questionable decision we'll get to a little bit later in the show, where maybe it's lucky he got the pick, but he put himself in the right position to at least tip it. And then the football gods favored the former walk-on for his second interception. And then Tony Rojas, go back and watch the film. He moved his ass all over the place to get in a position to get that pick. He covered his butt perfectly, picked it off, and then he earned the touchdown on that. Former running back in high school, did everything he could to get into the end zone. His hardest competition might have been Abdul Carter, who almost tackled him on accident there at the end. And then I know Kobe King didn't get an interception, but Kobe King not only was tackling people, but he was crushing people. I mean, he is making his presence felt all over the field with how hard he was hitting people. He ends up leading the team with tackles with 8. So all in all, your linebackers have 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and your Mike linebacker leads the team with tackles. Just a phenomenal performance by the Penn State linebackers in a crucial game on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. This was the linebackers' best game of the year. Tony Rojas, in particular, that was his best game he's ever played here. Really, really proud to see him play the way he did. Everybody's going to talk about the pick 6, but in the run game, he was all over. He filled the gap. He filled his gaps correctly. No penalties. So just really, really good stuff from Tony Rojas. And Dom DeLuca, I mean, what's there more to say about the guy? My fellow 570 compadre, he was all over. 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. I mean, unbelievable game. And Franklin talked too about wanting to recruit running backs as linebackers. Guys that played running back in high school, and you saw them really both of their pick 6s. Like, they both knew what to do when they got the ball in their hand. They didn't look lost like sometimes linebackers could look when they get the ball. They both knew what they were doing. They both had good returns. I mean, especially Rojas, but even DeLuca. So, really, really good stuff there. I thought they were in general a lot better in coverage. Their Jennings was not good, obviously, but a lot of that was we had his guys covered pretty much all the time. And then when there were open guys, he wasn't really able to connect with them as often as he wanted to. I thought the biggest play of the game was on the first drive, because stop me if you've heard this before, but they got to the red zone on the first drive, or they got right outside the red zone, one of the two.
Shocker.
Yeah, so stop me if you heard that before, but it's 4th and 1. I actually like the aggressive play call. Play action, because Rhett Lashley knew I need points here.
Right.
Everybody scores on Penn State and their opening drive. I got to get a touchdown because I'm going to need points later. And they go play action fake. Tight end's open right in front of me.
Right in front of me.
Yeah, he is wide open. And I go, oh, no. Passes a little bit behind him. Zakee Wheatley does a very, very good job booking it over there, giving the tight end a hard hit, breaks the ball up. And you just felt like SMU, even though our offense took a little while to get started, you just felt like they were kind of playing from behind from that point on, because they weren't really able to sustain any kind of drive from that point onward.
It's a good point,
really
Sean.
till the end of the game. So I thought that was the biggest part of the game right there. Like, if they score a touchdown, I'm not saying they would have won. I still think we win probably handedly, but it's a closer game.
A lot of players in Zakee Wheatley's situation just kind of jog over there because they're beat.
Yep.
And his hustle, which is kind of the storyline of the day, the theme of the day, the motif, if you will. His hustle gave him an opportunity to make a play on the ball and force the incompletion. Was it a good throw? No. Should have been a touchdown. But what do we always call luck? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Prepare yourself for the moment. You hustle over there. It's not a perfect pass. That tight end's actually a really good tight end. He bobbles it, and then you have an opportunity to clean it up. That doesn't happen if you don't put yourself in that position. So credit to Zakee Wheatley there. I honestly got fooled really bad. I thought they handed the football off and we stopped it. Then I saw he had the boot, and I was like, oh, he's gonna pick up the first. Didn't even see the tight end, and I'm like, oh, we're really in trouble. And then that play happened. So I agree with that. Sean, I think a lot of people are gonna look at this game and just say, oh, well, Jennings was just running around, running for his life pretty much the entire game, which is true. However, I want to emphasize one thing that is not going to be discussed, I feel like, enough. And that is Penn State earned the right to rush the quarterback by winning on first and second down more than they had the entire year so far. They did a really good job of stopping the run on first and second down, putting SMU in third and long situations where then they could pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. Brashard Smith, 18 carries for 62 yards, 3.4 yards per carry. LJ Johnson Jr., 6 carries for 26 yards, 4 yards per carry. Kevin Jennings, 8 carries for negative 25 yards, minus 3.1 yards per carry. The team ended up 36 carries for 58 yards on a 1.6 average. When you're able to stop the run as effectively as they were able to, it gives you those opportunities to chase down the quarterback, to get interceptions, to have fun. That's kind of what we've been preaching this entire season, and it finally came into fruition in the biggest stage. But I've got to give a massive shout out, and somewhat I'm going to pat myself on the back for this. We didn't think that maybe Devon J. Thomas counted as a breakout player, but what Devon J. Thomas did, what Keziah Izzard did, what Zane Durant did inside, they beat up the interior of this SMU offensive line. They just bullied them. And they not only
beat a dead horse.
Yeah, they literally beat a dead horse. And because of that, they were able to not just get some TFLs themselves, they were able to get the linebackers involved, the safeties got a couple tackles, and they were able to keep them in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 16, 3rd and 12, all because they were able to stop the run. And that's not ever, the highlights are never going to show the up the middle for a yard, up the middle for -1 yard. But there were a lot of those plays on Saturday, and the defensive interior deserves a lot of credit for it. I'm even going to throw Enai White in there because he had a couple stops in the run as well, which were very impressive. And I thought he was very, very good on Saturday. Just very impressed with the defensive line, especially those guys, big hog mollies in the middle. They did not give SMU any breathing room in the run game.
They did not. And that was something that I wanted to see. I thought the reason Penn State would win is because we had the advantage in the trenches, especially our defensive line versus their offensive line. and I knew we'd be able to rush the passer against their tackles. But yeah, I mean, they've been able to run the ball pretty effectively this year, SMU, and they really didn't have any room to operate. And like, look at that first that first or the second interception to Rojas. It was 3rd and long. I thought they were just gonna run like a little screen or something. I'm kind of surprised they let him uncork it because at that point he was already struggling. I really didn't think that was probably the smartest thing to do, but I'm happy they did it. And he ended up throwing it right to Tony Rojas. So yeah, but getting them into those 3rd and long situations makes things a lot easier on your defensive line. And they really did that the whole game, right up till toward the end of the game. I think it was the 4th quarter when Abdul Carter took them basically out of field goal range because nobody could kick on Saturday. We're going to talk a little bit about the weather. Yeah. And I think the weather affected both quarterbacks as well because they were both pretty inaccurate.
Yeah, and a little shout out to the student section too, because SMU could not do anything on the south end zone all day. Even when the game was decided, they got to like the 3-yard line, 1st and goal from the 3, and they ended up not even being able to kick a field goal because of false starts, delayed games, and sacks. Like that's just, and I believe maybe you remember what game that was, but that happened earlier in the year against Illinois. It happened against Illinois right before the half, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, my dad said the same thing. It's just like Illinois.
They missed their field goal, but still they were all the way inside the 5 and ended up not with any points. Which I love red zone defense, and that was a really good illustration of what the entire game was.
It got to the point that I was like, did they have a silent count? Like, do they have?
They were trying to clap. It wasn't working.
Yeah, because they couldn't hear anything, and communication was very, very poor for SMU pretty much the whole day. And I think Jennings too. I think things snowballed on him after that pass was incomplete, because he was pretty good on that first drive outside the incompletion on 4th down. That happened. Then he threw an interception, and then penalties, crowd, and I think the cold. Like they were not used to playing in weather like that. So I think things just kind of snowballed on him. I know he's getting roasted pretty good by everybody.
Yeah.
But he played against a pretty damn good defense and a really, really difficult environment. Like I think a lot of times Southern schools don't appreciate how tough it is to play up here. Well, SMU knows now how tough it is to go and play up here.
Just your mobility, right? Like you have another layer or 2 of clothing on. Like you're not able to move around as much. And once he had got sacked a couple times, his head and his eyes were looking at the pass rush almost immediately.
Yes.
It was very evident he was rattled. And again, I think he's a good quarterback. I think his upside is very, very impressive, but is having to deal with the other side of it. He had 5 turnovers against Duke. He had a couple problems early against Clemson. But I think he is fundamentally a good quarterback. We talk about red zone defense real quick. I just want to mention now Penn State after Saturday is 3rd in the country in red zone touchdown percentage allowed at 41%. Ohio State's still killing it at 37%, which is just insane. For an opponent to get in the red zone, only score a touchdown 37% of the time is just literally crazy. 41% of the time, you're telling me you can go into the red zone against Penn State, you have less than a coin flip chance of scoring a touchdown. That's pretty damn good for Tom Allen and his defense.
Yeah, 59%, they're getting 3 or less. So it's a good way to think about it. And yeah, like that makes a difference. And I think it speaks to, number one, when they get inside the 5, our defensive line is very, very good. And then, the back end is still good. So it takes a whole entire unit to do well in a stat like that. And it's kind of Tom Allen, right? He'll give you until about the 35 or the 40-yard line. It kind of drives me insane. But does it work? Yes, it worked on Saturday. They were still even SMU, who struggled the whole day. Not like they didn't pick up any first downs. They did. They'd get, first down here, first down there, and then sack, and then false start. Like, it works. I can't knock it. It didn't work against Oregon, but it worked against everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's for sure. Third downs real quick. Penn State's just been really good on third down, 6 of 13 so far this year. On Saturday, excuse me. SMU 3 of 14 on Saturday. So not so great there. Talked about the defense, talked about the defensive line, and Enai did something, I think, to me, and just needs to be shouted out one more time. I think Abdul Carter played good in his moments, but he just, so much attention's going to him now. It's allowing others to be a part of it. I mean, Vanover, I think, played very well as well. Smith-Vilbert, I think, played very well. Doing a lot of good things. I think Jalen Reed bounced back and had a lot better game. He tackled pretty well. Zion Tracy is really good. Still struggling a little bit in the tackling department.
Yeah, he did
but
performance.
Yeah, but he's still so athletic, and he seems to be really good in passing situations where you want him out there. AJ Harris just is locking things down. Cam Miller had a nice couple plays as far as tackling goes. I think he still struggles in coverage. He gave up the touchdown, but he's so good at tackling. And he's really improved there as well. So overall, I think the secondary did pretty well. Weren't really challenged that much because Jennings was just running for his life pretty much from start to finish in this one.
Yeah, and he really didn't have a lot of places to go, but it's hard for things to develop when you have Denai Dennis Sutton in your hip the whole time, and you have the defensive tackles, and not to mention Abdul Carter. So, like, even when he wasn't being sacked, he was being hit a lot. And the one thing that did still impress me about Jennings is he's a tough sucker to get down on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of near sacks that he was able to escape from. Like, we could have easily had like 8 or 9 sacks on Saturday. But he's just so hard to take down. And really the times that we took him down, again, he was in the pocket and he wasn't able to escape. And that's another thing that I think we did a pretty good job of, was not letting him escape, because a few times he did escape from the pocket. He did beat us a few times. That was most of his longest throws were when he broke contain. So he still showed a little bit of what he could do well. He just wasn't able to do it enough.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to look at the non-sack yardage as far as where Aller and Jennings ended up. But Aller ends up with 10 yards rushing, including sacks. Jennings ends up with negative 25 yards, including sacks. But I still think Aller probably ran for a lot more yards than Jennings. And if you would have told me that Aller has more rushing yards than Jennings from, not, subtracting out sack yardage, I think that's a pretty good sign that Penn State won this football game. But you're right. They did a really good job of being patient with him and containing first, sacking second, and trusting everyone else on their team to do what they're supposed to do. Like that pick to Rojas doesn't happen unless everyone trusts their job and trusts Rojas is going to be where he needs to be, and that's how you're able to get away with the pick there. Before we go to the offense, let's talk about the weather, because Sean, I am a little bit not sure how I feel about it. There's more. So first of all, I just want to say, like, yes, it was cold. It was going to affect both teams. However, I know they didn't have as much wind in Columbus, but Ohio State didn't have any problem throwing the pigskin around at night against Tennessee. And I know they have really good receivers, but this is one thing that I was a little bit disappointed in, was the passing game. And I don't know how much the weather influenced that. We talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I just want to preface that by both teams did struggle in that regard. Kicking, both teams struggled to punt the ball, which, by the way, you could pay me $15 to try to punt a football on Saturday. It'd be like punting a cinder block. And then finally, I just wanted to note, Penn State elects to not go ahead with the 47-yard field goal, 49-yard field goal. Probably the right decision after Ryan Barker sneaks by his other field goal, which seemed like that's all he was going to ever get on a field goal like that, just because of how cold it was and kicking in those situations and 30-mile-an-hour winds. So that's why they decided to go for it. It does make you in that situation, then maybe you don't run a normal passing situation, let Aller get sacked. Maybe you just, play a little bit more conservative there. Sack in that situation was deadly then if you didn't feel like you could kick a field goal from there. So, but in general, Sean, at least it wasn't raining. At least it wasn't snowing. Sun was out. There were gusts of wind, but otherwise just super duper cold. But no other conditions or nothing else besides like actual weather or wet environments you got to worry about.
Yeah, I thought the conditions were not good if you want the ball in the air at all. I know a lot of people. I think I'm going to be a little less harsh on Drew than maybe you are. If you watch the NFL in the playoffs, when you're in Pittsburgh or you're in New England or you're in anywhere up here, and it's January, that's how the games go. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of throwing the ball around, and you need to be able to trust your run game. And do I think Drew was great? No. And I think the things that made me a little that I didn't love was he missed some open guys. And that stuff I didn't like, but a couple balls got away from him that I just don't think would happen if he's in a dome. He also probably didn't want to chance things as much because felt like he didn't need to. And to be fair, he didn't. His team won by 28 points. So I'm not going to beat Drew up too bad today. It's just, like I said, a couple times he missed some wide open guys. I think the first drive we had, K-Tron was very open in the flat for like 3 seconds. And his progression, I guess, never got to K-Tron. So I don't know how that happens. But I'm not going to beat him up too much. And then as far as kicking the ball, yeah, that's how it's going to be. Had no problem going for it on 4th and 13, even live. I said, I get it. Look at this wind. They obviously don't trust Barker. And then he confirmed later why we shouldn't trust him. Made the kick, but he made it by about this much. So, and I'm putting
that might be an overestimation.
Yeah, like he barely got it. So ended up definitely being the right call to go for it. It was your best bad options. Didn't work out, but I understood it. And yeah, punting, it's funny, like you said, it's like punting a cinder block, and then that ground is so cold, you're not getting any roll on that. And Thompson, being a rugby style kicker or punter, relies on getting that roll. Wasn't happening Saturday. So good thing is we do not have to play in weather that feels like 11 degrees anymore this year.
Yeah. I do have some breaking news, Sean.
Oh boy.
Posted just a second ago on his X account. Safety Zakee Wheatley has officially announced that he will be returning for next season. So there you go. Pretty big deal given the fact that KJ Winston Jr. has already announced that he will be declaring for the NFL draft. Jalen Reed theoretically could come back, but we're expecting him to probably go to the NFL draft. If you lost Zakee Wheatley, you'd be looking at potentially starting Day Lane. You still might be starting Day Lane, but you might be starting Day Lane and like a Torre at the same time, which means you probably would want to go to the portal. So getting Wheatley back is huge in that sense, getting some leadership back in there. And Wheatley's played a ton this year ever since Winston's gone down with his injury. So Zakee Wheatley returning for his last season next year.
Yeah, very good. Very good to hear. I thought the best decision for him. So happy to have him back. Jalen Reed could come back.
I think so. I think he technically.
When did he get here? Was it 21 or 20?
I thought he had a COVID year.
Maybe
not. Let's see. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I don't know if he played as a true freshman
20,
or as a
freshman. Nope, you're right. He's done.
Yeah.
True freshman 2021.
Yeah, and I think he'd be gone anyway because I think he's ready. I don't know where he'll get drafted, but I think he's ready to spread his wings.
All right, let's talk about the offense in Drew Aller. Sean, I don't want to sound overly critical here because I thought Drew Aller played extremely well besides throwing the football, which I know that's mostly his job.
That's important.
But he didn't turn the ball over. He used his legs a bunch. I think the narrative of him not being able to move is completely killed now. I think even the national media has recognized that he has some wiggle. In the last month or two, he has really shown his ability, again, not just to be able to take off and run like he did on that 3rd and 7 to pick up a first down right before the half, but also just the ability to maneuver in the pocket, to make a guy miss in close quarters. He's doing that multiple times a game now. One time he did it, he had that throwaway that missed Allen a little bit. One time he did it, he found Clifford for a decent gain. He's constantly being able to show his ability to improvise, almost to like a Ben Roethlisberger ability, while also still have the ability to move well enough to pick up first downs with his legs. And so he's doing that all very well. He took care of the football. And to your point about cold weather games, that's like 90% of it. If you can run the ball, play good defense, and take care of the football, you're going to win like most of your games. And so he was able to do that on Saturday. It kind of reminded me of like a Pittsburgh Steeler win in the sense of like, let's just not mess this up as far as throwing the football. We got our running game finally going. We got our defense playing great. Like, let's just hammer them. And that's what they were able to do. But he did miss open guys, like you said a second ago. There was one to Amari Evans over the middle that you probably really wish he had it back. They ended up scoring on that drive anyway, but you really wish he had that one back. He missed a couple over the middle to Warren. Just not as sharpest. And again, and he even admitted afterwards. He said that he's a little bit nervous and he needed to calm down his feet a little bit. And it is what it is. I will just remind people, like you said a second ago, he will play better in domes, which the Fiesta Bowl will be, and then potentially in the Orange Bowl, which I guarantee you will not be 10 degrees. So not worried about it. I think Drew Aller definitely plays better in warmer dome environments. And he was able to do just enough. And again, the improvisation, the ability to escape, that's what they needed out of him. And he was able to do it. They weren't going to win the national championship with the offensive performance, but in the world of a playoff, it is about winning the game in front of you. And we already know that Drew Aller has the ability to make throws to keep you in games against the best and the best. We saw that against Oregon. That doesn't just disappear. So I think this is maybe just a small step sideways before eventually advancing forward. I don't think this is a step back as far as Drew Aller is concerned. He didn't play great, but I'm not worried about what he's going to be able to do moving forward.
Yeah, happy you brought up the Oregon game because I was about to mention that. Because I think, and we know how narratives go in college football, according to some people, the only thing that matters is narratives. And with Drew playing well against Oregon, and being a big part of putting up all those points, it kind of, if that doesn't happen, I think we're having a conversation of, well, Drew Aller can't play good against good teams. And we're not going to have that conversation now because we could just point at the Oregon game. So I think I know it's very easy for me to just say it was freezing weather and he didn't have his A game. Happens. And I'm able to just kind of move on from that, especially when you think of the fact that we won by 28 points. Game really after the 2 pick sixes that I guess really had nothing to do with the offense. You felt like the game was in hand and you didn't really have anything else to worry about from that on. You're still a little concerned. I know we're psychos, so we're always a little bit concerned, but in the back of your head, you're just like, we're not going to lose this game. That you can't throw 2 pick sixes on the road. But yeah, when you're playing playoff football, these games, it doesn't matter if you win a close game or you win a blowout. You're playing against an 11-win team, and if you win by a point, good, you won, you advance. If you win by 28, even better. But all that matters is getting that win, playing well enough to get the win, and that's what Drew did. So, I mean, it's not going to be it wasn't his finest hour, but nothing that I can't live with.
Yeah. Bupsy on YouTube says Drew now has his first playoff game under his belt. He'll play better against Boise. Tend to agree with that notion to a certain extent as well. I also just wanted to say Penn State was able to win with their best player, Tyler Warren, going 4 catches for 33 yards, long of 15, and 1 rush for 6 yards. So 39 yards of offense for Tyler Warren, and Penn State wins 38-10. Not a bad day for Penn State. Again, I think Josh Pate put it pretty well on Sunday. They have won in shootouts. They have won in defensive struggles, rock fights. They have won when their offense is clicking. They've won when their defense is clicking. Having, if you will, the various abilities to win the game and having confidence in the fact that we can play in this style of game or that style of game is huge at this point in the season. Nobody is saying, hey, if we just get in a shootout with Penn State, they're not going to be able to play. No one's saying, hey, if we can keep Penn State to 10 points, we're going to win this football game. They've been able to do it in a variety of ways. And I think that also breeds confidence for the team as far as, hey, it doesn't matter what kind of game we get ourselves in. We have an opportunity to win this because we've done it already this season. And I think that's an important lesson that they have under their belt.
Yeah, no doubt. To be able to, that's a big part of winning championship games, because I'm going to envision if we make it to a national championship, or, let's go crazy and say we win it, you're probably going to have to win every type of game. That's just the way these things usually work. You're going to have to win a rock fight. You're going to have to win a shootout. There are going to be games where the defense isn't just feasting on the quarterback, because these teams are really freaking good from here on out. And you get to a Notre Dame, you get to Georgia, you get to Ohio State or Oregon again. It ain't gonna be just the defense teeing off on them the whole time, and you're gonna have to score some points. And I think Penn State's gonna be relatively comfortable with that. I will also point out, it is funny that SMU probably did the second best job on Tyler Warren this year. And I guess if you had to give him credit for something, it's that.
They were watching him.
Yeah, like they were all over him. So got to give them that. They went into that game saying, we're not going to let Tyler Warren beat us, and Tyler Warren wasn't the one that beat him. It was just everybody else.
Yeah, and there's a play I'll show. I think we posted on X already. There's a great play when Penn State goes from like a picket fence position, and then they come back into a normal set on the shift. Tyler Warren's lining up at fullback, and I think even it was a run up the middle that Nick Singleton ends up scoring on. I'm sorry, Katron Allen ends up scoring on. It's the second one. And even though it's a run, when Tyler Warren hits the offensive line, the line of scrimmage, 2 or 3 SMU defenders are still on him as if he might leak out in the flat to get the football. And that leaves a massive hole for Katron Allen to score on. And so even in a play where it's not like an obvious decoy, he's still grabbing the attention on a run play up the middle. And that just goes to show you how he's, he had a great block earlier on on one of Singleton's runs. He's impacting the game in various ways. That's why he deserved the Mackey Award, and the guy from Bowling Green can go suck an egg. And the fact that he was not even a unanimous consensus All-American first team is ridiculous. But he's found other ways to impact it. And again, other people are going to have opportunities because of it. And I think that's a good transition to Trey Wallace. I mean, look, I think Tyler Warren's your number 1 wide receiver. But if you are in the camp of you have to have an actual wide receiver as your number one wide receiver, Trey Wallace had 4 catches for 48 yards. And I know that's not like, holy crap, hell of a performance. But who did they go to in the cold environment when they needed to move the sticks? It was Trey Wallace on the probably to me one of the biggest plays of the game. I think it was already 14-0, but it was a 3rd and 10. And Drew Aller, after 2 really bad incompletions, is able to move up in the pocket, almost gets hit from behind, and he's able to find Trey Wallace for a first down. That might have been the longest gain, actually, of 25 yards. That was the game right there. Like, oh, they moved the sticks. They end up scoring on that drive. It's 21-0. But that play, great job by Drew Aller. But who does he go to? Trey Wallace. And you look at the stats. Trey Wallace, 4 catches, 48 yards. And we said Tyler Warren, then Kaytron Allen, then Khalil Dinkins had 1, then Liam Clifford had like a little flip, and Singleton had 2. So if you're doing the math at home, only 1 other wide receiver had a catch, and it was Liam Clifford's little flip pass.
I'm laughing because when I was on lunch today, our buddy Michael Higgins made me laugh because he said it looked like Liam Clifford was going to score a touchdown, and then you're like, oh, it's Liam Clifford. He's going to get 8 yards because there was nobody there.
No.
It was a great play by Drew, actually, to be able to.
Very good play.
Because I think the play was to go to Warren downfield, and again, SMU, to their credit, had him blanketed. And yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about Wallace. I think he has been really steady in a room that you were really looking for some stability in. He has provided that. I think he's strung some games together here down the stretch where he has been that security blanket outside of Tyler Warren,
right?
Outside of Nick Singleton. And
I'll tell you this:
he has been that wide receiver one.
I don't know if it's going to be Saturday or I guess Tuesday, whenever the hell New Year's Eve is. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I still think we have a Khalil Dinkins game at some point here. I don't know if it's going to be against Boise State. I don't know if it's going to be potentially in the Orange Bowl. I don't know if it's going to be in the national championship. I just feel like there's going to be a Khalil Dinkins game where he's going to have 2 touchdown catches, and people are going to, like, national media is going to go, who the hell is Khalil Dinkins?
He usually shows up when you least expect him.
Yeah, like Batman.
Yes.
I don't know. I just got a weird vibe about that. Somebody write that one down at home, because I will scream from the rooftops if I'm right about it. And if I'm not, I will never talk about it again. But I just got a weird feeling like Khalil Dinkins is going to make his presence known. I don't know how healthy he was until right now. You know what I mean? And he's doing a really good job blocking. Yeah. I just got a feeling you're right. As we get, I don't know if anyone's going to do as good a job as Ohio State can do on Tyler Warren, but other teams are going to do everything they can to stop Tyler Warren, right? And I just feel like that's going to give more and more opportunities for guys like Khalil Dinkins to make some plays. And I don't know. I'm just putting that out in the universe, Sean.
I mean, you may be talking about the wrong tight end, too. Could be Luke Reynolds.
That's true. That's true. Sean, we got to talk about the running backs. I feel like it's a disservice we hadn't talked about them yet. Back-to-back games, in my opinion, where like this is kind of the culmination. If you end up losing Singleton and Allen to the draft next year, which we didn't talk about this that long ago, but there's some rumors out there that Singleton may return. Just throwing that out there. There's some rumors out there. Speculation, 100%. There's some rumors out there. The Oregon game and this game, though, is exactly what you kind of wanted as far as like the mountaintop, the summit of what these two guys' expectations were going to be when they came in as true freshmen. Nick Singleton, 14 carries, 90 yards, 6.4 yards per carry and a touchdown. Kaytron Allen, 11 carries for 70 yards, also 6.4 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. I don't know how often this happens, but Kaytron Allen actually had the longer run of the two today on Saturday, which is kind of interesting. But if you're counting at home, that's 160 yards. And I don't know if you know this, Sean, but if you add up 2 averages that are the same, and then you divide by 2, you're going to get the same average again. So 160 yards of rushing, 6.4 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. Quick math for you. That is what you need in a playoff game. And again,
can we check that math? somebody.
Someone check the math. I don't know for sure. But that to me, Shawn, is like, if you're able to do that, and we have harped on the lack of a running game, which I'm not going to say SMU defense didn't do a good job, because they did do a good job early. But we have harped on the running game completely going non-existent in big games. And before someone says this wasn't a big game, I'm going to shut you right down and say this is a top 10 matchup and you can, lick a rock. This was a big game. And they were able to run the football. They were able to run the football against Oregon. So we're starting to see some patterns here, and it's a really good sign if you're Penn State, because yes, Drew Aller is good, inconsistent at times, but good. But what doesn't matter is if you can run the ball with your two back for 6.4 yards per carry. Not going to lose a lot of games, Shawn. You're not going to lose a lot of games, especially if you take care of the football.
Especially if you have 2 pick sixes.
Especially, I want to know the stats.
You're not going to lose.
Has a team ever lost with 2 pick sixes? I'm sure they have, but it can't be very many.
It can't be very many. I'm sure it's happened, but that's why Michigan lost to TCU a few years ago. AJ McCarthy had 2 pick sixes. If they didn't, they literally win the game. But yeah, I think the backs are peaking at the right time. And God, it wasn't even a month ago we were really worried about the run game, and it just feels like they've put it together. Now, early in the game, there was a little bit of concern because it was a 2-yard carry, 3-yard carry, and it was just kind of body blows. And then as the game went on, I think the offensive line started to lean on them a little bit, and they were able to open up more holes, and the running backs were able to see those holes and run through them. So it was just sort of as the game went on, the backs got better. And yeah, that's really what you want as far as balance goes, because the whole idea of having K-Shot Allen and Nick Singleton is that they could build off of each other. K-Shot will soften them up, and then Singleton will come in with speed. And I agree with you. It is interesting that K-Shot had the home run ball on Saturday. Sort of home run. I think it was about a 24-yard run for the touchdown. And yeah, and Singleton, though, he's running the ball really, really well right now. He's even breaking more tackles, which is something we wanted to see more from him specifically. And he's running violently. I think Franklin said that he called himself a violent mother, fill in the blank.
He's been okay throwing that F word around a little bit more. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I that's the thing with Frank. Franklin freaking loves this team. You
bunch
could just
of effers?
He really you could just see in the press conference, he just loves this group. And I think he loves every team, but this one in particular. I think this one, 2022, 2016, 2017, I think those are the teams that he just loves to death.
I don't want to get into the James Franklin aura right now because it's a good off-season topic and we have a lot to talk about. But the notion that he said afterwards about, I'm at this stage in my career where it's not about me, it's about you guys. A, cool. B, screams and shouts that he's never going anywhere as long as Penn State wants him.
I think so. Yeah. I think he's been here 11 years, guys.
Yeah.
That's an eternity in college football. When Kirk Ferentz finally retires, he's the dean. He's been there the longest.
Fourth in the country, I think, right now.
Yeah. He's getting to be, it's funny too, when we hired him, it doesn't seem that long ago that we hired him. He was a young guy and he's one of the graybeards now. I think he literally I think his goatee is almost fully gray, literally. So.
I hadn't watched the little 4-minute video that Penn State Football put out yet, but I'm going to, and I might end up crying just because I'm a big Franklin guy. He was obviously there when we were there. But we'll talk about that more, hopefully sometime in February, because we're still going to be talking about college football in January. Shawn, we got some fan questions if you don't mind.
Let's do it. Let's talk to the fans.
Let's talk to the fans again. Shout out to everybody watching live on YouTube. Please, if you haven't already, please make sure to like the video. And if you think we're kind of cute, go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. First fan question. From Cowboy Ribeye. What was going on with the offense? And I know that one play that Drew had, Katron earlier than hesitated, is getting a lot of attention. That was that first drive that he's talking about, that 3rd and 3. But there was actually a corner right next to him that you couldn't see, so then it was too late. Well, then maybe he might be talking about the 3rd and long situation there. We talked about the offense a lot, Sean. I don't want to maybe hash out what was going on with the offense, but are you concerned about, we talked about Aller specifically, but are you concerned about the offense heading to Boise State?
I mean, I think you're always concerned about your weakest unit, in that the receivers are still the weakest unit on this team. So I think there's always a healthy level of concern there. Am I paralyzed with fear about it? No, especially with the way we've been running the ball. And last I checked, Tyler Warren is still on Penn State's team, and he takes a lot of the bad stuff away from the receivers, because we could just, when in doubt, just find 44 and throw it to 44. And that works a lot. And one of the things about Tyler Warren is when you work to bracket him, when you work to always be putting a hand on him like SMU did, it opens up other things in the offense. Now, we didn't have a whole lot going in the passing game on Saturday, but it opened up a lot in the game. And we were able to use Warren himself as a run blocker. So, I mean, a little bit, I think, again, you're always going to be concerned about your weakest unit, which just so happens to be on offense. But am I any more concerned than I was after the Oregon game? No.
Fair enough. Let's go to the next question from Dorito Bandit, longtime follower of the show. He says, fun question. The Generations of Greatness helmet with the numbers is underrated. Can we wear those more often? So, Sean, we didn't even talk about the Generation of Greatness uniforms, which I loved. I want to know if that was a team decision, but I loved it. I think it provided a little bit more oomph to them. And I would just say this. Look, I know you can't wear those uniforms because I'm assuming that they're the higher seed coming into the Fiesta Bowl, that they'll be the away team. It would be my assumption. So you can't wear the full uniform unless they have an away Generations of Greatness uniform. But I am a proponent in tournament play to wear the same uniform if you can. Penn State often wears their gray uniforms in basketball all the way through. Sean, I'm going to add on to this question. What if they just wear the Generation of Greatness helmets for the rest of the playoff? Just throwing that out there.
I'm a proponent of wearing the numbers on the helmet all the time. I thought.
What about the gray face mask, Sean? That was, so people responded to Dorito's question and they were like, not the gray face mask, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd rather the blue. I like the gray, but I would rather the blue. And it's almost if it ain't if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So sure, I'm not gonna have a civil case over if we wear the gray face mask, but I think we should always have the numbers on the helmet. I remember watching like old videos of Penn State wearing, like John Cappelletti days, wearing the numbers on the helmet. I just think it looks cool. It's a cool look, especially to a plain helmet, because it keeps that plainness, but just adds a little oomph to it.
Little oomph.
Like, I think Bama's helmets are really cool.
Well, someone commented to Dorito and said, I don't want to be blue Alabama. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, but we also had the numbers on the helmet in the past, so we would not be. We would just be going back to something that.
And also, I wouldn't mind being blue Alabama just for the sake of winning. But
true, I'll take what do they want? Saving 5 national championships for? I'll take that too.
Wouldn't be opposed to that. All right, thank you, Dorito, for that question. Let's go to another question here. This is from Mudbug, the Pick'em winner. We'll probably say that for the next year, so enjoy that, Mudbug.
Till someone dethrones you.
He says, so happy for this team and Coach James Franklin. It was so damn cold. His question, top 10 win in program history. Could probably unpack that more at some point in the off season. I would say yes, Sean. I think you got to put
my
it in
lifetime.
Okay, you put your natties in there.
Yes,
obviously. You
top
put maybe the '94 Rose Bowl in there. Maybe you put, some of the other games against maybe like an Oklahoma in the '70s. Some of the other undefeated season ones. Sure. You put in the Big Ten championship in 2016. You maybe put in 2016 against Ohio State. Whatever you want to do. I'm not saying it's number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even 6, but I think it's got to sneak into 10.
Was it bigger than the USC game this year?
I would say so, Sean. I would say so.
Oh man, I don't know. That was the biggest win in world history.
I'm gonna give you one here, Sean. Is this game bigger than the 05 Orange Bowl or 06 technically? And I think it's top
bigger
10.
than any bowl game in my lifetime.
There's a lot of big bowl games in your lifetime.
I mean, it's bigger than like the Rose Bowl a couple years ago because you're playing for a national championship.
Yeah, I agree.
And
it's the first one.
Yeah, it's the first time we're doing this. So
broke a college football playoff attendance record.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And the Orange Bowl, because I hate the term meaningless bowl game. But they were
how many bowl games have you watched, Sean, this year?
True. Well, I'm not. When does Pitt play Toledo?
Toledo, it's April. No, Holy Toledo, it's April Toledo. I don't know. I have no idea when any of the bowl games are.
Like those ones have never really meant anything. Like I do find it a little funny when boomers are like, "Man, I miss the bowl games." Well, the bowl games. I'm sorry, the Meineke Car Care Bowl, nobody really ever cared about. It was cool to watch his background, but nobody really cared about it outside of the fans and the teams. They were just fun things to watch, which is what I imagine they'll still be as fun things to watch. But yeah, this one was bigger because you're playing for a chance at a national championship. And I think the answer is actually a little incomplete because we don't know where we're going to go from here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like if we go to the title game maybe we fool around and win the whole thing, then this is a really, really, really big game.
But to me, the first one has some significance, right? It's the inaugural playoff game. If they beat Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, I still put this SMU game over that game.
I would too.
You know what I mean?
If we beat Notre Dame or Georgia, I might put that one over it because that's Notre Dame or Georgia. But
I see.
But
we'll see what happens.
It would be bigger than Boise.
You could argue where this thing ends up. I'm going to go crazy for a second, Sean. Penn State wins a national championship. You could argue 3 or 4 of those games in this run would be top 10, top 15 games of all time.
I know, and I'm sure like the 86 and the 82 games or 82 teams are like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You only got to play one of these.
You could say 94 Illinois. Like you could put a lot of.
Yeah, you could. Nobody's list is going to look identical.
No.
Nobody's.
But it's fun.
The 2024 USC game does not belong on this list, though, for anybody wondering.
No. By the way, Northern Illinois, Notre Dame's kryptonite won in double overtime in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl tonight. If you're curious, against Fresno State.
When I was watching Notre Dame, I was like, God, they look really good. But I just keep going back to how did they lose to Northern Illinois? It was not even really that good of a MAC team.
Hey, they're famous Potato Bowl winners.
They are the potato champs. So
Pitt plays Toledo in the Game Above Sports Bowl on December 26th at 2 p.m. in Ford Field.
I don't even know what the Game Above Sports is.
I don't know what Game
Above is. Is it a restaurant? Is it a store?
I assume it's like a sporting goods store. And then the better bowls, the better bowls do start pretty much after that, though. We got, I say that, then I'm about to say Rutgers versus Kansas State, but take that for what you will. Oklahoma plays Navy this year. I didn't even know that. That's hysterical. USC does play A&M. That actually could be fun.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've looked at the bowl games. Just straight honest with you. I have not looked at.
Colorado play?
They play BYU
in the same conference.
in the Alamo Bowl. What's going on?
I think we gave up.
They play BYU. I don't think they played BYU during the season, though. Still weird.
No, they didn't. Yeah, Colorado got a ridiculously easily schedule, and they still lost 3 games. But
right.
They have the best football player of all time, so it just makes me wonder. I don't know how that happened.
line up your New Year's Eve for you. Alabama at Michigan at noon. Louisville at Washington at 2. South Carolina at Illinois. By the way, both teams are 9-3. Believe it or not, whatever the SEC fans tell you, they're both 9-3.
Mm-hmm.
If Illinois beats South Carolina, does that mean Illinois should have been in a playoff? People are asking.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If Illinois beats South Carolina, did Illinois deserve to be in the playoff?
People they're 9-3. They're 9-3. Can we talk about that after we're done with fan questions?
Yeah, Baylor, LSU at 3:30, and then Penn State, Boise State, all alone at 7:30. Yeah, I think I only have one more fan question, so let me get this out.
We got to talk about the narrative humpers in the media.
I do want to answer this. So Matty Ice asked about Jennings' worst game is against Duke and Penn State. Coincidence? I just think it comes down to pressure on the quarterback, and he was unable to deal with that. So,
I mean, could we have seen some things that Manny did and the guys were familiar with? Yes. I kind of made that point with my dad during the game. I was like, this guy had a very similar performance against Manny. Wouldn't be surprised at all if they looked at stuff that Manny did against them and said, well, we're familiar with that. Let's do that.
That's a good point, Sean. Last question. I do want to talk about this. From Rich Akers, longtime listener of the show. Yep. Appreciate you being here, Rich. Thoughts on the 4th and 1 goal at their 19? Playing to win or simply folly? Sean, look, I know I'm going to be on the wrong side of this. I don't care.
Oh, no. Don't do it.
I actually, my wife and I disagree on this significantly. At the time and still to this day. I had no problem with them going for it there. I had 0 problem with it. I think it was, look, you're going to punt the ball 20 yards anyway. So worst case, best case scenario, you get a 30-yard punt off. SMU had moved the ball decently until right about where they were going to give the ball back anyway. 4th and 1, you hadn't done anything really on offense to this point. You just feel like if you go down and score on that one, it's 21-0, it's over. And you just need to get that first down to get things going. And you got to feel like your guys are a lot bigger than their guys, and you can pick up 1 yard with Drew Aller. And I still don't exactly know where the spot ended up being. It was kind of a weird QB sneak in that sense. They kind of like nosed.
I think Franklin said that they fumbled it.
Okay, they didn't get it. Okay, that makes sense.
They got it back, but it made things awkward.
Right. I think he gets it if it's clean because they moved it pretty well. Like the pile was over the 20. I have no issue with the decision. And again, I like Franklin's answer. We were going to be aggressive in this game. You can't preach that. And how many times has Franklin said, oh, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to be aggressive. And then early in the first half, he's not aggressive at all. And he gets aggressive as the game goes on, especially in the 4th quarter. He's much more aggressive. But he's aggressive earlier, and you could make the argument it's better to be aggressive early because you can still make up for it later versus waiting to the end to be aggressive and then not having a chance to redeem yourself. So I like the aggressiveness. And again, look what SMU did. Go down the field after the opening kick in the second half, and you're down 28-0, and you decide to kick a field goal to still be down by 4 possessions. What kind of message does that send to your team? So I like the aggressiveness. It didn't work out, but it does instill a lot of confidence you have in your defense. And yes, Dom DeLuca bailed out the decision. I get all that. I don't mind the decision. I'm just going to put it out there. I know people are going to say it's boneheaded. I know Corey Geiger, by the way, he's a fan of the show. He had some ridiculous takes in this game. For whatever reason, I had very limited service. But the only thing I could get on my mobile app was Corey Geiger hot takes that were just insane. But I was okay with the decision to go for it there. I thought it was more like 4th and inches. When I watched the game back, I was like, ooh, that was a little bit more than I thought. Maybe it's not a QB sneak situation, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, I did not like it. Look, you're always going to be skating a line of aggressiveness, of aggressive and conservative. Always. If it was 4th and 10, well, if you're thinking I'm going to be really aggressive, you should go for it. Now, is there a difference between 4th and 10 and 4th and 1? Of course. But you're always making that judgment call. And Franklin made a judgment call, which I fully disagree with, to go for it on 4th and 1 at his own 20. Now, if it was 4th and 1 at the 40, I actually would have been okay with it. Because that's 20 yards. You're not giving the ball to them in the red zone. I just think it's 14-0 at that point. They just threw 2 pick sixes. Their quarterback is definitely rattled. Why give them the ball to give them any momentum? And if they had a competent offense, I should say, if they were playing offense competently, they get something there. But we got lucky because Dom DeLuca, the pride of Northeast PA, failed to coach out. I just don't agree with giving them the ball in the red, with risking giving them the ball in the red zone against a team that's top 3 in the country in run defense. And they know, okay, this is the game. If we want any chance here, we have to get a stop. And they did. Now, maybe if it was a clean exchange, maybe we pick up the first down. I actually think you're flirting with about 50 to 55% you're going to get the first down there. But anything could happen. It's a cold day. That ball, the exchange isn't a gimme, and it didn't go clean. So
neither is a punt though. Is a punt a gimme in that situation?
No, but I would rather, like you said, like you mentioned, you're going to get about a 20-yard punt. You're probably not wrong. It's probably getting to the 50 at most. I'd rather them start from the 50 than the 20 when they're a struggling offense.
We're not going to agree on this, which is okay.
Yes, this is what we do. We disagree sometimes.
You're wrong, but it's okay.
No, you are definitely wrong. But
you do have the benefit of hindsight.
I do. And I probably would have said, now my reception was awful on Saturday, so I couldn't really tweet it out. I probably would have tweeted, and those of you who follow along with my live tweets, I would have said, if we had made it, well, we made it. I would not have made that decision, but I'm also not making $9 million to make that decision.
That's right. Aren't you? And
it just didn't work out. But now, did it mean anything? No, because Dom DeLuca saved the day again. And also, I want to call out T. Frank here.
Oh,
on his show, he gave Abdul Carter Defensive Player of the Game. They do Defensive Player of the Game every week.
How
is it not Dom DeLuca? Guy has a pick six. He's all over the field. He has another interception. Bails James Franklin out. How is he not the player of the game on defense?
By a sauce.
Sorry, honestly, Frank. I think you're great, but I had to call you out on that. I was like flabbergasted when I heard that when I got home.
Yeah, I would honestly even put Enai Dennis Sutton over him because I think Enai Dennis Sutton.
He just had an awesome game.
Yeah. And that's not even from a stat perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kobe King over Carter, honestly.
Yeah, I mean Carter was he was very good. Like you said, he gets so much attention now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Aaron Donald with the Rams. Like there'd be some games that he would only have a couple tackles, but you go back and watch, it's because he's getting triple teamed sometimes. And It just opens everything else for everybody else. And he still got a sack.
All right. What else? We talked about the
we got to talk about the SEC homers.
Yeah, but before we get to that, I just want to quickly mention, in case you lived under a rock, Penn State will play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, 7:30 on New Year's Eve. If they would win that game, they would go to the Orange Bowl and play the winner of Notre Dame, Georgia. Notre Dame took care of Indiana Georgia got the bye officially. Stetson Bennett out with a UCL injury in his elbow. He had surgery today. They're going to go with Blackstock or whatever the hell his name is.
Carson Beck, not Stetson Bennett.
Yes, thank you. Jesus Lord. His backup's like Gunner Stockton or something, chicken stock.
Stockton.
Something like that. Yeah. He'll face the Notre Dame defense. Ohio State blew the doors off of Tennessee. And will face Oregon in the Rose Bowl, which you could argue is probably one of the best games of this entire playoff. You can make the argument those are the two best teams in the country right now. And then Texas was able to hold off Clemson, pesky Clemson, but won by 14. Will take on an Arizona State squad, which Bevo will not be in attendance at the Peach Bowl. They are not allowing Bevo, the Longhorn, to make the trip. There's not enough room on the sideline, apparently. Imagine catching a football and then getting impaled by a Longhorn. That'd be something. Before we get out of here, you want to talk about the SEC homers, and then I just want to do a quick 5-second elevator conversation on Boise State. We'll be back on Thursday to preview Boise State. But Sean, the floor is yours. What would you like to say to the SEC homers out there?
Yeah, so we all watched the games this weekend, and I think it's fair to say they weren't as competitive as we would have liked. And that's true. I mean, Penn State's, I was happy it wasn't competitive. But every other game, I mean, I would have liked to see a better game. I thought Indiana Notre Dame, for example, was going to be a good game. It really wasn't. I know it ended up being the closest game, but it really wasn't a good game. I thought Tennessee Ohio State was going to be a good game, and it wasn't. But then what happens, mostly before the Ohio State Tennessee game, mind you, is all these people get on Twitter and they go, well, this is what we said. This is why Alabama and Ole Miss should have been in. No. And the ones to blame for these games being the way they were are Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina. So why is it their fault? Because you lost 3 games. It is your fault that these games sucked. Because you guys were not able to take care of business like y'all like to talk about you would. Y'all let everybody down, and you have nobody but to blame but yourself. It got to the point, and I hate to call friend of the program Kirk Herbstreit out, but he said one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard on ESPN, and that's saying a lot. He said that wins don't really matter. Like, all right, then we shouldn't play the games then, Kirk. SMU and Indiana and anybody who's not one of the top Big Ten teams, they just shouldn't play football anymore. It should just be 7 teams from the SEC or 8 teams from the SEC and 4 teams from the Big Ten and just call it the playoff. I guess that's what these people want. Like, it's an insane way to look at things. And again, people will say, well, it's about who you beat. True. Where was SMU ranked? They were the 11th seed. Why? Because they didn't beat anybody all year. Where was Indiana ranked? They were the 10th seed. Why? Because they didn't beat anybody all year. So yes, that was dealt with by this committee, who I thought did a good job. I'm like one of the only people in the world that thinks the committee did a good job on this with the flawed structure that they were given. Everybody knows it was a flawed structure. They did their best to make lemonade out of lemons. And they arranged the teams the way they should have been. So did SMU, did Indiana, did Tennessee, who again, strangely people don't talk about Tennessee getting, the worst loss of the weekend. Strangely, they don't mention them. Did all these teams belong? Yes. And they all got beat. It happens. Watch Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. You're going to see multiple blowouts because, well, I could get into that. There shouldn't be 7 teams in the playoff on each side in the NFL, but I digress. And you could even make an argument there shouldn't be 12 teams in the playoff in college football, but that is the structure we were given. We were given a structure where there are 4 automatic 4 buys for the top 4 conference champions. Things I don't agree with, but that was what the committee was given, and that's what happened. But for people to say that wins don't matter, and again, we shouldn't play the games then. That's why you play every week. And to just say, well, no, Alabama's better. Well, I could easily say in the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals are better than the Denver Broncos. But it doesn't matter because Cincinnati has a losing record. So I
play to win the game.
Yeah, it just drives me nuts to see these narratives that are being spun by people. And again, strangely, they don't talk about Tennessee in any of these. It's just the most bizarre thing in the world. They never talk about Tennessee in any of these when they got beat worse than anybody. But it's not surprising, but it's just disappointing.
Yeah, and again, I don't think any reasonable fan thought Indiana should be left out at 11-1. Like that's just
yeah. Like you were really going to leave them out.
I agree with everything you said. I would just reiterate again. I think I saw the Bear with another terrible tweet the other day. The committee does not seed the teams. The committee ranks the teams. That's it. They are not in charge of the seeding. They're not ranking teams to give them a better path. They are ranking the teams 1 through 25 on who they think is the best teams. They do not have any responsibility to seed a team to give them a better path. I agree. I think Shawn and I agree. The way they had the seeding set up was incorrect, and they need to fix it. But that is not the committee's responsibility. They rank the best teams, and they go with it. So I agree, Shawn. I agree with everything you said. I think Josh Pate does a really good job on his Sunday show actually going through this.
Yes,
which I know
take on this.
I know typically he's come off a little bit more SEC lately, but I think he has a really good. Should go listen to what he has to say on it. The only the part I would disagree with him about is he claims that Boise State, the SMUs of the world, have zero chance of winning the college football playoff. Now, he says it's possible for Boise State to beat a Penn State. It's possible for an Indiana to beat a Notre Dame, but he doesn't think it's possible for them to win a national championship. He said it's zero. I will fight back and say in 90% of the cases, probably right. Probably right. But if you're telling me there's a chance that SMU beats Penn State, and you're telling me there's a chance that Indiana beats Notre Dame, well, there's theoretically a possibility then where a SMU, let's say SMU beats Penn State, then they play Boise State. That's a reasonable matchup. And then they would go play, let's say, a quarterbackless Georgia or a Indiana squad. They have a chance there. And then let's say they come out and play Arizona in the championship. You couldn't tell me they didn't have a chance in that path. Now, that would take a lot. Arizona State to come out of the other side. It would take Indiana beating Notre Dame. I get it. But my point being, if you think there's a chance for SMU to upset somebody or for Arizona State to beat Texas, then theoretically there's a chance for them to win a national championship as well. I get it's difficult to tie multiple games together as far as being a Cinderella team, and it's not as easy as it is in basketball. I understand that, but there's still a possibility of it depending on how the rest of the bracket shakes up. If all of the favorites win besides one underdog, it's still going to be very difficult for that underdog to win a national championship. I get that. But if you were assuming there is a chance for an underdog to win one game, then there's a possibility that an underdog somewhere else can win a game. And now the path, based off all the spreads people like to use, is better for all of those underdogs to then turn into a Cinderella story. And therefore, they do have a chance to win a national championship.
They have a chance, albeit a very, very small one. And I would even point at college basketball and say Cinderella doesn't win national championships. Cinderella beats a team like a Penn State. They could beat a team like Ohio State. They could beat one of these teams. They might even win a few. They may even get to the title game or the Final Four.
Rarely.
Cinderella always it always turns into a pumpkin at some point in college basketball. But it's about the fun. It's about the ride. And I think as time goes on.
Not that we're rooting for Cinderellas on New Year's Eve.
No. We hope Cinderella goes home and that there's no ball for her on New Year's Eve. But are there years that Cinderella's probably going to make a little bit of a run and have some upsets? Yeah. Like a team like SMU rolls into town and wins. Sure, that could happen. Of course. It's college football. These are college kids. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
But, it's just hard for Cinderella to string 3 or 4 wins against really, really good teams. Yeah, it's hard for anybody. It's going to be hard for Penn State. Penn State and Ohio State, who has the most talented team in the country. It's going to be really hard for them to string 4 wins together against 4 really good teams.
Absolutely. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, Boise State, quickly.
Oh, yes, elevator pitch.
Elevator pitch for Boise State. Penn State plays Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl in what, a week, basically? A week and a day.
Week and a day, yeah. Week from Christmas Eve, and today is Festivus for the rest of us.
That's right. We will be back on Thursday to preview it. Quick elevator pitch. Boise State, 12-1, victory over UNLV in the Mountain West Championship. Their only loss is a 3-point loss at Oregon. Oregon was struggling a little bit at the time. They hadn't found their groove yet. Obviously, the guy that everyone's going to want to talk about is their running back, who, if you hadn't heard, was a runner-up in Heisman, Austin Genty, 344 carries, 2,500 yards. He needs, I believe, $140 for the record, and he is, or 130. I think he's averaging 140 a game. Penn State's averaging 100, so it's going to be close as far as what that ends up being. But he is a menace to society there. Otherwise, though, Boise State, very beatable. The one thing I want to leave you with before we get into it a lot on Thursday, Boise State's pass defense, very bad statistically. Top 100, 113th, I think. They're really bad. Drew Aller playing in a dome, very good. And that's how I'll leave that until Thursday. Sean, any thoughts on Boise State until then?
Tyler Warren, very good. Yeah, they have a guy that might be the best player in America. And that's always going to be a challenge. Franklin talked a lot today in his press conference. He did have a press conference, if you haven't checked that out, about how good he is yards after contact. Runs a lot like Derrick Henry. And I think this is a guy that's going to play a long time in the NFL because he reminds me a lot of college Derrick Henry. And we're gonna have to tackle. We're gonna have to have maybe our best tackling day of the year. I know the guys are. I know they practiced yesterday. I think they're gonna get a couple days off here.
Yep. They're going back to practice on Christmas Day.
Yeah, and then I think, when are we getting out to Arizona? Did they say?
I don't know if they said
the day after.
I don't think they're waiting. I don't think they're going out the day after Christmas. I think they're maybe the day after that.
Yeah, so I know they're gonna definitely be working on tackling. I think, we tackled pretty good against SMU. There are a few missed tackles there, but overall, I thought they did a pretty good job. But you're gonna have to do a really good job because Ashton Genty, he actually runs, like, I know I brought up Derrick Henry, for Penn State perspective, a lot like Larry Johnson, where he's a big dude, but he's also a lot faster than he looks, and when he gets in the open field, he's gone. So he has that sprinter speed as well. And then, but like you pointed out, Corey, you look at their schedule, they played a lot of close games this year. There are a lot of games that Ashton Genty kind of pulled them from the fire, because their defense does leave a lot to be desired. And I kind of think they count so much on him to win them games. And when you're playing against a team like Penn State, who has the ability to make you one-dimensional, if you are one-dimensional against a team like Penn State who has a lot more talent than you, it could be a sad day for you. So
I'm very curious to see what their game plan is, because I think if you're Boise State, you got two ways to look at it. You either give him 40 carries and just say, win us or lose us the game, or you kind of come out and maybe try to use him as a decoy a little bit and then see if you can move the ball, pass to run kind of. I don't know what they're going to do. I honestly am almost leaning towards, if I'm Boise State, I'm just giving him 45 carries and saying,
I am too.
Just we might 3 and out 3 times in a row, but maybe he'll eventually break one, and we just think our defense will be able to do enough. I don't know, but we will break that down more on Thursday.
Yeah, I wouldn't love the idea of dropping back to pass and being like, oh, no, we'll be able to handle Enai and his son and Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I would prefer to wear those guys out.
Yeah, just run the ball. But hey, no, just throw it. Just don't even think about Genty. What am I saying? Don't give it to him.
Shawn, Penn State won a playoff game for the first time in our lives, the first time in anyone's life. They beat SMU 38-10. This has been a recap of that. We will be back on Thursday to talk about the Fiesta Bowl, which no one's really talked about, the potential of winning 2 bowl games in 1 year, which is pretty cool. But they will be going to the Fiesta Bowl to face the Boise State Broncos, New Year's Eve, 7:30 p.m. We'll be back Thursday. Until then, thank you for watching live on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast, we appreciate you there as well. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're watching or listening. You can always find us on Twitter at HardcorePSUFB. Shawn, any final thoughts? Are you good?
I think we're good. I hope everybody enjoys their Christmas. Cory, I hope you enjoy your Christmas.
I have one more thing.
And yeah, go ahead.
Shout out women's volleyball, national champions.
Yes.
2014 was their last one, so 10 years ago. They now have 8, which is 1 away from tying Stanford's 9. So shout out to them. It was very impressive. Obviously, in the semifinal against Nebraska, and then they kind of just dominated Louisville for the most part on Sunday. So congrats to them. But hopefully we can see some magic of our own here for Penn State in the tournament that they are trying to win. Next up, Boise State. That's Sean Kane. I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening live to Hardcore Penn State Football.